Welcome to Make Your Own Luck. I'm Karen Brook. What does it really mean to make your own luck? Have you ever looked at someone and thought, they're so lucky? Maybe it was someone who built an incredible business, someone who seems to be in the right place at the right time, someone who met the right person or bought the dream home, landed the opportunity, or perhaps someone who always seems calm, confident, and in control, no matter what's happening around them. Maybe you've even looked at your own life and quietly wondered, why does that seem to happen to them but not for me? It's an interesting question because I don't believe that luck works the way most people think it does. For years, people have said exactly that to me. Karen, you're so lucky. They've said it after seeing me fly an aeroplane or board a private jet, after hearing I worked alongside Bob Proctor and his son Brian Proctor, after watching me build businesses, speak on stages in Toronto, Canada, LA, the Middle East, travel the world, or create opportunities that from the outside seem to appear almost effortlessly. And every time someone says it, I smile. Not because they're wrong, but because they're only seeing the visible part of the story. They're seeing the result. They're not actually seeing everything that came before it. The decades of study, the uncertainty, the decisions, the setbacks, the times I really questioned myself, the moments I had absolutely no idea how something was going to happen, but yet I chose to move anyway. That's the part people don't see. And I think that's where this idea of luck becomes really interesting. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is that what people call luck is often simply the visible outcome of hundreds of invisible decisions all lining up to support new outcomes. It's decisions to keep learning, decisions to keep showing up, decisions to trust yourself, decisions to stay open, decisions to keep moving when there's no guarantee. If we only ever see someone's highlight reel, it's easy to believe life just happened for them. But life very rarely works like that. Years ago, I made the decision to learn to fly fixed wing aeroplanes. Now, from the outside, that's probably something that sounds exciting, and it is. I absolutely love flying. I grew up in a family of pilots, growing up in the tiny, isolated town of Birdsville in outback Australia, with a population of only 100 people. We used our Cessna 210 to fly around like people would use their four-wheel drive car to go from A to B. We would simply fly. There was something incredibly freeing about lifting off the runway and watching the world open up beneath you. But I can promise you, there was nothing particularly lucky about the beginning. I wasn't born knowing how to fly. I wasn't sitting up the front feeling completely confident. I had to make a decision and start before I was ready or knew even where I would get all the money to complete my pilot's license. I had lessons where I doubted myself, moments where I had to trust my training, times where I had to make decisions quickly because of weather or cloud. Flying has taught me so much about life. One of those lessons is that a pilot is constantly adjusting heading to stay on course to their destination, whether that's by manual inputs or via the GPS navigation system. A pilot is constantly making tiny corrections. They're checking instruments, adjusting for the wind, changing course, realigning again and again and again. And you know what? Life is exactly the same. If you leave your direction unchecked, you'll end up drifting. I think that's why I chose to call one of my programs the GPS for New Success. Because your life already has a GPS, but it isn't outside of you, it's within you. And just like the navigation system in an aeroplane, it's constantly giving you feedback. The question is, are you listening? And are you willing to adjust? I've also been incredibly fortunate to spend many years learning from extraordinary mentors. My late mentor, Bob Proctor, had a profound influence on the way I think and see myself. He challenged me to look beyond circumstances and present results, beyond appearances, and beyond my excuses. To understand that the outer world is always reflecting something much deeper happening within us. That wasn't always comfortable. In fact, sometimes it was confronting because it meant I had to take responsibility. It meant accepting that if I wanted different results, I needed to work on myself first. In 2015, shortly after we started working together, he asked me what I really wanted, and I said I wanted to help people all over the world change their life. And he looked me square in the eye and he said, "Well, change your own life first." That one simple moment has stayed with me ever since. I've never stopped becoming more of who I'm meant to be. And you know what? There is no end to personal development. We are infinite beings with enormous potential, and we need to be expressing more of that. One thing I've noticed after working with leaders, business owners, and entrepreneurs for many years now is this. The people who create extraordinary lives, and I mean extraordinary lives by their own standards and design, don't necessarily have fewer problems. They're not always smarter, they're not always more talented, and they're certainly not fearless. They're simply willing to make decisions that other people postpone. They're willing to begin before everything feels perfect. They're willing to have conversations with themselves and others that feel uncomfortable. They're willing to invest in themselves, and they're willing to trust that clarity often comes after we get moving, not before it. From the outside, that can look like luck. But the truth is, the inside is a completely different experience. Sometimes we think confidence comes first and then we'll act. But I've found the absolute opposite to be true. Action builds confidence. Now, I'm a very confident woman and leader, but that hasn't happened by accident. It's evolved through making decisions and moving over and over and over again. And then one day someone looks around at your life and says, "Wow, you're so lucky." But I don't believe we're here to simply work harder or just collect achievements or spend our lives chasing the next milestone. I believe we're here to expand and to experience the fullness of life, to grow, to become who we want to become, to continually discover what's possible, to work at the leading edge of creation and walk the path by making it as we go. And one of the most beautiful parts of this journey is realizing you don't need to know every step before you begin. You simply need to know the next one and take it. So as you listen to this podcast over the coming weeks, I'll share stories from my own life. Some will make you laugh, some will surprise you, some may challenge you the way you've been thinking, but every single story has a purpose to help you realize that extraordinary lives, like your own, are not built by extraordinary people. They're built by ordinary people making decisions and taking action consistently over time to design and build the life they really want. So before we finish today, I'd love to leave you with one question. Where in your life have you been looking at someone else's success as luck, when perhaps it's actually the result of decisions you simply haven't seen them make? And then ask yourself something even more powerful. What decisions have I been postponing because I'm waiting to feel ready? Ask yourself that question. What's the one conversation you've been postponing? The one commitment, the one application, the one phone call, the one enrollment, the one courageous step that your inner guide has been quietly encouraging you to take? Because here's what I've learned. Life has an extraordinary way, almost a magical way, of meeting people who are moving. You don't have to see the whole runway before you begin taxiing. You don't have to know every answer before you take the first step. You simply have to decide that where you're going is more important than where you've been. And perhaps that's what making your own luck has always been. Not forcing life, not controlling every outcome, but living in harmony with these timeless principles, trusting yourself, making the decision, taking the step, correcting the course when you drift, and becoming, really becoming the person capable of receiving everything your future is wanting for you. So here's your reflection for this week. Before next week's episode, I'd love you to spend a few quiet moments journaling on these two questions. Where in my life have I been waiting to feel ready before making a decision? And what's one small action I can take this week that moves me towards the life I really want? And remember, you don't have to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be all this week. You simply have to begin. Thank you for joining me for this first episode of Make Your Own Luck. Until next time, remember, success is never an accident. Keep making your own luck. I'm Karen Brook, and I'll see you next week.